Okay, then let's start excretory system. Excretory system and excretory products and their elimination, we can see. So now the complete excretory products and elimination, we are going to give a brief of the class, the total excretory system in brief. We'll go a little faster, we'll end, we explain that a whole week here, and now this is the ending session for the excretory system. So what is excretion? Excretion is the elimination of the metabolic waste materials like ammonia, urea, and uric acid. Elimination of excretory metabolic waste material like ammonia, urea, and uric acid from the body. Then basically, based on the excretory material we are eliminating, we can say ammonotelic animals, ureotelic animals, and uricotelic animals. Ammonotelic animals, ureotelic animals, and uricotelic animals. Ammonotelism means those animals excrete ammonia. Ureotelism, animals excrete urea are called the feature called ureotelism. Uric acid elimination can be called uricotelism. So animals excrete ammonia are called as ammonotelic animals. Process of excretion of ammonia, ammonotelism. Ammonotelic animals like aquatic invertebrates, bony fishes, aquatic amphibians, tadpoles, and aquatic insects. The ammonia is highly toxic, so excretion needs excess of water. This kind of excretion needs large amount of water. That's why animals are eliminating this particular ammonia. We can say they are present in the more water available condition. Then process of excretion of urea is called ureotelism. So in liver, what we do, we convert the ammonia into less toxic urea for the conservation of the water, because if it is more toxic like ammonia, we need to dilute with water. So the conversion of the ammonia into urea can be termed as that ornithine cycle. We can say that feature as ornithine cycle. That conversion of ammonia and urea in the process called ornithine cycle, it is going to happen. The for excretion of urea, that requires only moderate quantity of the water. Then in compare with ammonia, we used a large amount of water in case of ammonia. Ureotelic animals, terrestrial and semi-aquatic amphibians, frogs, toads likewise, cartilaginous fishes, aquatic or semi-aquatic reptiles like alligator and turtles are all going to excrete urea as an excretory material. Then uricotelism, the process of excretion of uric acid. We say uricotelism. It is uric acid is insoluble in water, so water is not at all required for the excretion. That's why animals who are living in water scarcity conditions are going to prefer uric acid as an excretory material. Like birds, terrestrial reptiles, insects, land snails, and some land crustaceans are eliminating uric acid as an excretory waste material. So when it comes to the excretory organs in the animal kingdom, the flame cells, which are more pronounced for phylum Platyhelminthes, even they call protonephridia. Then primitive nephridia will find along with the Platyhelminthes, rotifers, some annelids, and cephalochordates. Whatever the nephridia present in them, we call protonephridia. Nephridia will find in case of annelids, Malpighian tubules in the insect, antennal glands or green glands in crustaceans, and the higher animals are having kidney. So now we are moving with the human excretory system. That learning and trying to explain, need to get the basics of the human excretory system. A pair of kidneys, a pair of ureters, urinary bladder, urethra are belongs to the human excretory system. You can see all that in diagram. The red color is renal artery and the blue is renal vein. As I said to the protocol, always red blood vessel, we can say artery, and the blue one is in vein. You can see in the medicine also like the same. Okay, so then Pavani. So the human excretory system, in that first we are now moving with the kidney. The structure of the kidney, the reddish brown bean shaped structures enclosed in a tough 3-layered fibrous capsule which is situated between the levels of last thoracic and third lumbar vertebrae. The length of the kidney is 10 to 12 centimeter, width 5 to 7 centimeter, and the thickness is about 2 to 3 centimeter. Average weight of the kidney 120 to 170 grams. Okay. So then on the concave side of the kidney, there is an opening, that hilum or hilus, you see, through which the blood vessels, nerves, lymphatic ducts, and ureters are going to enter into the kidney. That hilum leads to a funnel-shaped cavity called renal pelvis with projections called as calyces. With projections, we say them as calyces. Each kidney has outer cortex and inner medulla. Medulla has few conical projections called renal pyramids. We say them as medullary pyramids. You can see that renal pyramids are medullary pyramids here. And they are projecting into the calyces. These are all the calyces here. And the cortex extend between, the extension of the cortex between the two medulla, any two medulla, we call columns of Bertini, which is a very famous one. The columns of Bertini, you see. Then the structure of kidney. Now moving with the structure of kidney. Here we said the outer portion is cortex, the inner portion is medulla. That medulla is seen in the form of renal pyramids, and the cortical projections in the medulla are called columns of Bertini. Through the hilum, the renal artery is going inside, renal vein is coming outside, the ureters are also coming and going to open into the urinary bladder. And as we discussed, a series of events here in this particular area, and you see the arrangement of the nephrons also here. So let's continue with the nephron. Nephron is the structural and functional unit of the kidney. Then each kidney has nearly 1 million tubular nephrons. Nephrons are said to be the structural and functional units of the kidney, which it include two portions basically, that glomerulus and renal tubule. So nephrons, the glomerulus. Glomerulus is a tuft of capillaries formed by afferent arteriole. A fine branch of renal artery will enter into the glomerulus. The fine branch of renal artery will enter into the glomerulus, and renal artery is going to form the glomerulus, we can say. Then who is coming out from the glomerulus? The efferent arteriole is going out, coming out from the efferent arteriole is coming out from the glomerulus. Okay. So this is the criteria, this is the scenario. The glomerulus is a tuft of capillaries, we say. The blood from the glomerulus is carried away by an efferent arteriole. The renal tubule begins with a double-walled cup-like Bowman's capsule, which encloses the glomerulus. The glomerulus plus Bowman's capsule, considered as Malpighian body. We say it as Malpighian body. The tubule continues with the proximal convoluted tubule, we say PCT, Henle's loop, descending and ascending limb, distal convoluted tubule. Henle's loop is a hairpin shape. It has descending and ascending limb, what we said now. The DCT of many nephrons opens into the collecting duct. The collecting duct extends from the cortex to the inner parts of the medulla. They converge and open into the renal pelvis through medullary pyramids in the calyces. Nephron. The Malpighian body, PCT and DCT are situated in the renal cortex. In the nephron, Malpighian body, PCT and DCT. Where does loop of Henle will go? That is in the medulla. The efferent arteriole emerging from glomerulus forms a fine capillary network, what do you say, peritubular capillaries around the renal tubule. That in the similar way, around the Henle's loop, we have to imagine vasa recta. These are all belongs to the blood capillary. The glomerulus will come out as efferent arteriole, and above on the PCT and DCT, it forms the peritubular net. Above on the Henle's loop, it is going to form the vasa recta. So blood capillary side, you should remember that peritubular net and vasa recta. Then types of nephrons based on their arrangement and location, that we say the types of nephrons are of two types. Cortical nephrons, 80 to 85% are said to be cortical nephrons. Juxtamedullary nephrons, that means they are very less here, 15 to 20% of the nephrons are considered as juxtamedullary nephrons, whereas the cortical nephrons are having, how do we recognize the cortical nephron? With their short Henle's loop, and vasa recta is absent or highly reduced. Importance of vasa recta we are seen actually. The presence of vasa recta and longer Henle's loop is facilitating the counterflow mechanism, isn't it? The juxtamedullary nephrons are having the long Henle's loop, which runs deep into the medulla, along with the longer vasa recta that makes over the counter current hypothesis. The counterflow mechanism, when we learned, we focused only on that Henle's loop and the vasa recta. How does they are going to make the concentrated urine? So that means we say the use of juxtamedullary nephron straight away for counterflow mechanism or counter current multiplier mechanism. Okay, so how they are helpful for the formation of concentrated urine by the absorption of large amount of water in a process called counterflow we are seen in the earlier classes. So then three steps of urine formation when it comes to glomerular filtration, reabsorption and tubular secretion. So first of all, glomerular filtration. The glomerular capillary blood pressure causes the filtration of blood through the three layers: endothelium of the glomerular blood vessel, that is simple squamous epithelium; epithelium of the Bowman's capsule, that is with simple squamous epithelium. In between them, a basement membrane is present. So similar like alveoli, but some anatomical differences, histological differences we have, like the filtration slits are present. Epithelial cells of Bowman's capsule are arranged in intricate manner, leaving some minute spaces, we say filtration slits or slit pores, and also we can see the blood capillaries of the glomerulus are having the minute pores which are helpful for the filtration process. Almost all the constituents of the blood plasma except the proteins pass into the lumen of Bowman's capsule. So as we know, the 5 liters of the blood will come out for every minute in cardiac output. Among that 5 liters, 1100 to 1200 of the blood is filtered by the kidney per minute. That means it constitutes 1/5 of the blood pumped out by each ventricle of the heart per minute. The amount of the filtrate formed per minute is called glomerular filtration rate. So that 1100 to 1200 ml, when it comes here in the glomerular capillaries, how much is entering into the neck of Bowman's capsule? 125 ml per minute. That means here 180 liters per day is entering in the form of glomerular filtrate or primary urine. So do we leave everything? No. That what about that 180 liters which are entering into the neck of the Bowman's capsule, PCT, along the length before they go out into the cross the collecting duct and enters into the ureters, we need to make absorption of the useful substances. Highly useful substances are called high threshold substances. So around 99% we are going to absorb, the reabsorb by the renal tubule. So normal volume of the urine will be the similarly 1.5 to 1.8 liters, mostly 10 liters, 2 liters, what do you say? The substance like glucose, amino acid, sodium, infiltrate or reabsorbed actively. What is active transport? That by using energy we can say, when we want total, we need to use the active transport by using ATP, should take it out. Nitrogenous wastes are absorbed by the passive transport. How much necessity is there, that much only we absorb. The passive reabsorption of the water occurs in the initial segments of the nephron. Then here, because the concentration gradient is going to be much different from the surrounding fluid, cortical fluid, that's why initially passive transport we prefer. Thereafter, as long as becoming equal that with surrounding fluid, we prefer to take use of energy to bring out everything. So PCT reabsorb most of the nutrients, like 70 to 80% of electrolytes and water also going to be absorbed in the PCT. For that, the simple cuboidal epithelial cells of the PCT is having the microvilli, which increases the surface area for reabsorption process. Then in the loop of Henle, the minimum reabsorption takes place. Properties of each and every part is very important for us, like in PCT, what is happening. And for that only to remember two arrow marks. This arrow mark indicates absorption. This arrow mark indicates secretion into the lumen. That means the The final destination is urinary bladder. Into this particular fluid, cortical fluid in the cortex, medullary fluid in the medulla. Into this fluid, that means the peritubular net and vasa recta taking away towards the heart. You should understand, you should remember throughout the particular process of urine formation. This is a very important basic to be remembered. Okay. Okay, then what's happening in the descending limb? It is permeable to water, but almost impermeable to electrolytes. This concentrates the filtrate. Then ascending limb is impermeable to water, but allows transport of electrolytes. So filtrate is getting diluted. You need to correlate with the counterflow mechanism also. In DCD, conditional reabsorption of sodium and water takes place. What is conditional? Facultative. We use another word for this. That means influence of someone. Who is someone here? ADH, antidiuretic hormone, and aldosterone hormone. Then with their influence, we are going to absorb the water and salts, whatever necessary. Then the collecting duct extends from the cortex to the inner parts of the medulla. That means collecting duct is both in cortex and medulla. See, here it is in cortex and also entered into the medulla. It reabsorbs a large amount of water to concentrate urine. It also allows passage of small amounts of urea into medullary interstitium to keep up the osmolarity. So then if you see here the tubular secretion. Secretion means from the capillary we are dropping this into the tubule. Tubular secretion we can say. Cells of PCT and DCT maintain ionic balance, like sodium potassium balance is maintained by them, and acid base balance of the body fluids by selective secretion. Then like H place potassium ions, ammonia into the filtrate and absorption of bicarbonate from it. This is all to maintain the acid base balance. And collecting duct maintain pH and ionic balance of the blood by the secretion of H plus and potassium ions. It's a bigger area actually that we have very few lines in this particular area. This is enough for us. Just to remember that particular word, tubular secretion for the maintenance of acid base balance. So need to make partitions like that. In PCT, what is the thing happening? In descending limb of Henle's loop, in ascending limb of Henle's loop, in distal convoluted tubule, in collecting duct. Likewise, we need to separate, and while you people are reading the theoretical issue, then for every theoretical representation, you need to compare with the diagram what is happening. The diagrammatic, if you are able to draw the diagram, that we say, if you are able to draw the diagram, that automatically you can understand everything here. That means for that only we require two things. Arrow mark outside, absorption. Arrow mark into the lumen, that is secretion. Okay, so then let's come for the concentration of the urine, the concentration of urine. The Henle's loop and vasa recta helps to concentrate the urine. The flow of filtrate in the two limbs of Henle's loop and the flow of blood through the two limbs of vasa recta are in opposite direction. In our words, we said the flow of renal fluid in the descending and ascending limb of Henle's loop is opposite to the flow of blood in the ascending and descending limb of vasa recta. What do you call it as? A counterflow mechanism. So the countercurrent and proximity between Henle's loop and vasa recta maintain an increasing osmolarity towards the inner medullary interstitium. That means the concentration gradient of the vasa recta from outer medulla to inner medulla, it increases. If I use this kind of language, you people able to understand, isn't it? The concentration gradient of vasa recta in the descending limb increases from outer medulla to inner medulla. That means 300 to 1200 milliosmol, isn't it? So then why that this gradient is mainly caused by because of sodium chloride and urea. Sodium chloride from the DCT and urea from the collecting duct, which makes the increase of concentration of descending limb of vasa recta from outside to the inside. We made this particular portion when we are learning in detail. I made this portion inside here, isn't it? So just they get separated, that's all. There is no much difference. Then the sodium chloride is transported by ascending limb of Henle's loop. that is exchanged with the descending limb of vasa recta. What he is saying, this particular sodium chloride is exchanged with the descending limb of vasa recta. Sodium chloride is returned back to the interstitium by ascending limb of vasa recta. We are returning this back again in the ascending limb of vasa recta towards to the descending limb of Henle's loop. Similarly, the small amount of urea enters the thin segment of the ascending limb of Henle's loop, which is transported back to the interstitium by collecting tubule. So why we are taking this sodium chloride and urea? Why we are taking means to increase the concentration gradient in the descending limb of vasa recta. What is the use by increasing the concentration gradient of the descending limb of vasa recta? That means to absorb the water in the ascending limb of vasa recta. By showing that concentration, we absorb water from the ascending limb of Henle's loop. And that's why by the absorption of water and leaving sodium chloride and urea, ascending limb of vasa recta concentration gradient will decrease. You see here 1200 to 300 will decrease from the inner medulla to outer medulla. This facilitates the counterflow mechanism. We say this facilitates more absorption of water and for the formation of more concentration urine, more concentrated urine. This transport of substances facilitated by Henle's loop and vasa recta, we say countercurrent mechanism. It maintains a concentration gradient in the medullary interstitium. It helps in an easy passage of water from the collecting tubule for concentrating the filtrate. So the human kidneys produce urine 4 times concentrated than any other, the initial filtrate which is formed here. So it is done by hormonal feedback mechanism involving the hypothalamus, juxtaglomerular apparatus, and heart. I request the people to erase this particular black marks. Please erase this particular black marks. Thank you. It is done by hormonal feedback mechanisms involving the hypothalamus, juxtaglomerular apparatus, and heart. Changes in blood volume, the body fluid volume, and ionic concentration are going to activate the osmoreceptors in the body. So that regulation by ADH, when body fluid level decreases, that means when you are not drinking water, the osmoreceptors stimulate the hypothalamus to release the antidiuretic hormone, which is released from there itself. ADH prevent diuresis. That's why we say antidiuretic hormone. What is diuresis? Excess urination, we say diuresis. By facilitating the water reabsorption from the DCT and collecting that, it prevents diuresis. That's why we call such hormone as an antidiuretic hormone. An increase in fluid volume switches off the osmoreceptors and suppresses the ADH release. To complete the feedback, that ADH constricts blood vessels, resulting in an increase of BP. This increases the glomerular blood flow and GFR. And the regulation by juxtaglomerular apparatus. There is a special sensitive region is called juxtaglomerular apparatus, JG apparatus. What we said that the distal convoluted tubule, when it come in contact with the afferent arteriole, the densely packed simple cuboidal epithelial cells of the distal convoluted tubule are called as macula densa. Whereas the smooth muscles of the afferent arteriole are called as juxtaglomerular, what do you say, that smooth muscles of the afferent arteriole are called as juxtaglomerular cells. Juxtaglomerular cells of the smooth muscles of the afferent arteriole, densely packed cuboidal epithelial cells of the distal convoluted tubule, collectively called as juxtaglomerular apparatus. I know I am going a little faster here because this is just revision. As I discussed the whole week in the last week, we discussed each and every part in detail. Just I am making you to remember. So these particular issues, what we learned as a whole of excretory system in brief, we are now moving. That's why comparatively with the earlier classes, it will be a little bit faster. So juxtaglomerular apparatus formed by the cellular modification of the DCT and the afferent artery at the location of their contact. JGA regulates GFR by renin-angiotensin aldosterone mechanism. We call it as ROS mechanism. A fall in glomerular blood flow, very important line, a fall in glomerular blood flow. When does the glomerular blood flow will fall down? When does the glomerular blood pressure decrease? Then we say when you are not drinking water, when the thirst that desert condition, we created some condition there. When you are not drinking for the water for a long period of time, and when you are losing the water in the form of sweating, there at the time we can expect a fall in the glomerular blood flow or a fall in the glomerular blood pressure. The GFR activate the JG cell to release the renin. What renin is doing, converting the angiotensinogen from liver into angiotensin 1. Angiotensin 1 further converted into angiotensin 2 by angiotensin converting enzyme released from the lungs. Angiotensin 2, what it will do? That the counteract it is going to do. That angiotensin 2 increases the glomerular blood pressure by making vasoconstriction, and glomerular filtration rate also followed by it will increase. And angiotensin 2 also activates the adrenal cortex to release the aldosterone and ADH for the absorption of water and salts by aldosterone. Aldosterone causes reabsorption of sodium and water. Aldosterone causes the reabsorption of sodium and water from the distal parts of the tubule. This also leads to an increase in blood pressure and as well as glomerular filtration rate. The regulation by atrial natriuretic factor. What is the situation? Contrast situation we can say. That means when you drink large amount of water, surrounding atmospheric temperature is comparatively low. At the time, what can be expected at the time? So at the time, the water levels in the blood is going to be more. That means glomerular filtration, that glomerular pressure is increased and blood flow is also, the blood becomes more diluted. So that's a blood pressure also increase. At the time, this increase in the blood flow to the atria of the heart, right atrium of the heart will respond and release the atrial natriuretic factor, which causes vasodilation. Pressure increase, isn't it? That's why blood vessel is getting dilated and thereby decrease the blood pressure. And also, it inhibits the absorption of water in the DCT by inhibiting ADH and aldosterone. So, the mixturation, what is mixturation? The elimination of the urine from the body is called as mixturation process. We can say that process as mixturation. So let's continue. We close here. Okay. That release of urine, we say that gradual filling of the urinary bladder. When urinary bladder is filling with urine, the stretch receptors in the urinary bladder, you see the stretch receptors are present in the urinary bladder. They are stretching. The stretch receptors on its wall send impulses to the CNS, moving to the central nervous system, and the CNS passes on motor messages. The contraction of smooth muscles of the bladder. Here you see the motor messages are going to that particular smooth muscles of the bladder, and the simultaneous relaxation of the urethral sphincter. You can see these are the sphincter, internal urethral sphincter and external urethral sphincter. So that makes the release of sphincters that leads to the process of elimination of the urine. What do you call it as the mixturation process? Okay, so that neural mechanism causing the mixturation is called mixturation reflex, whatever we are seeing now. As we said already, that 1 to 1.5 liter, 1.8 liter, that urine is going to be eliminated per day. 25 to 30 grams of urea will be added in them. That means we are eliminating 25 to 30 grams of urea in them. That urine is a light yellow colored watery fluid, which is slightly acidic. pH is about 6.0. Urine has a characteristic odor. Urine has a characteristic odor. The various conditions affect the characteristics of urine. The urine analysis helps in clinical diagnosis of many metabolic disorders and malfunctioning of the kidney, like glycosuria, presence of glucose, and ketonuria, presence of ketone bodies, indicates that diabetes mellitus. And that means we take the urine sample. when we found the glucose and ketone bodies more in the urine sample, we can declare that this person is facing with a problem called diabetes mellitus. That is insulin deficiency, if you remember. As we said earlier, that there is a role of other organs also in excretion, like lungs are removing carbon dioxide, 18 liters of the carbon dioxide per day they are removing, and the liver participation, that is participating in the ornithine cycle that secretes bile containing bilirubin and biliverdin we discussed in the digestion process. Cholesterol, degraded steroid hormones, vitamins, drugs. Liver is the detoxifying organ. Then most of them pass out along with the digestive waste that we discussed in digestion absorption chapter. And the sweat and sebaceous glands also playing minimum little bit experience eliminating excretory waste. The sweat contains water, sodium chloride, the small amounts of urea, lactic acid. Likewise, the primary function of the sweat is to give cooling effect. That thermoregulation. That the sebaceous glands eliminate sterols, hydrocarbons, and waxes through the sebum. Sebum provides a protective oily covering for the skin. Saliva eliminates the small amount of nitrogenous waste. Okay, so this is up to here. That as I said to you earlier, that we don't go for disorders actually. Disorders of the excretory system. We generally we don't move for disorders of excretory system till the time we left with the disorders of the excretory system, isn't it? So that's it about this particular area. So then I'm ending this screen. Now let's come back.